an initiative that Domino's Pizza did one time that was super clever. One of the biggest complaints is like the pizza may show up to someone's house and, if you've driven over a real bumpy, lumpy road, maybe you shook the pizza up and there's some cheese stuck to the top of the box or, whatever. It would be disruptive to the structure of the pizza to bounce over a pothole
Sure.
filled road, right? And so what they did is instead of, complaining to the city, they just started fixing potholes. And they would put like a little Domino's logo, kind of transparent, but you could still see it like on top of the tar. And they just started fixing potholes all over these little towns, right, that were causing this disruption in the way the pizza was delivered. They got tons of press from that, tons. I mean, they got all kinds of national press and press releases and stories written. And like, it's just a really creative way to look at marketing. It's like, well, here's a problem bouncing down these horrible streets trying to deliver these pizzas. Not good for the pizza. People don't like it. So we could complain about it and try to get the city to do something, or it's not that expensive. We can just go out and patch some potholes, right? And
Yeah.
they did. And so they got whatever permitted they need. They started patching potholes, and lo and behold, it turned into some massive national marketing campaigns.
Sometimes one good conversation leads to another. And that's how we got here to this episode of the Optimal Aging Podcast, the show for gym owners and other fitness and well-being and health professionals who want to grow with more people over 50. Let me tell you what I mean. Yesterday, I went up to Rick Mayo's office here in the northern part of Metro Atlanta and recorded his podcast about my new book, which is called Selling Longevity. It's available on Amazon.com now. And Rick was kind enough to have me on his show to talk about the book. He's been a big supporter ever since I started Prime Fit Content a few years ago. And full disclosure, I do some work for Alloy. Now, the conversation went on for a good hour. We had a lot to talk about. I felt like we could have kept talking. One of those, about serving the older, quote unquote, older fitness market and communications and content and marketing and key messages and all these things that I geek out on. Well, he kind of geeks out on them too. So we had a good conversation and I wanted to keep it going. And he was kind enough to do that today. And I thought, let's keep it limited. Let's keep it tight. I'm going to give you 5 questions, Rick. We're going to do 5 questions with Rick Mayo, CEO and founder of Alloy Personal Training. And that's what this conversation is. I enjoyed it. Again, I always enjoy talking with Rick, and I think you will too. He's always got a lot of good insight to share about what he's learned and what we can learn from him. I'm not even a gym owner, let alone beginning a franchise business, but a lot of the lessons that he's sharing here in this conversation about entrepreneurship dovetail beautifully with what I'm learning and struggling with in my own business. So I think you'll get a lot out of it. I hope you do. Here's my conversation with Rick Mayo. Rick Mayo, hello, my friend. Good to see you again.
Hi, Jay. How are you?
I'm excellent today. How's everything in your world?
It's good. It's really good. Yeah. So busy as always, but loving it. Loving it. So appreciate it. And it's good to see your smiling face again. With you being a new published author, I'm sure you're swamped with book signings and flying all over the country. And
Yes.
you just have to be
Yes.
covered up, right?
It's just really a lot. It's a lot, so many
I get it.
pressures on my time. Everybody wants a piece of me now. I just can't help it.
Well, look, hey, thanks for making the time. Like, don't forget us little people
Anything
now
for
that you're a
you,
published
Rick.
author.
Anything
Well,
for
I
you.
appreciate that. Again, it's not lost on me. So,
Yeah, well, you mentioned the book. Thanks very much, and thanks very much for talking about it with me on your podcast,
yeah.
which is going to air next. You're going to release that next week, I think.
Yep.
So we're not going to talk all this episode about my book, which is called Selling Longevity and is available now on Amazon.com.
Oh, look at you. Nice plug.
Nice plug, nicely
It is
done,
your
right?
podcast. I mean, you could just plug the whole time if you want.
I'm afraid people might turn it off if
Right.
I did
Like,
that.
leave it alone. We heard about the book already.
Enough with the book.
It's a good book. It's worth it. It's worth the little promo for
Yeah.
sure.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm proud of it. There's some good stuff in it that I hope people enjoy. And, um, you know, I thought we would open this conversation by talking about another book that you got me to read a few years ago. I don't think you and I talked about it directly, but you talked about it on your podcast. It's called The Gap
Hmm.
and the Gain. And I thought, listening to your show, I thought that sounds like a nice point of view, and I need to get my head wrapped around that. So I bought this book, and it was just fantastic. And basically, I'll just share the premise, or you share the premise. Do you remember?
Yeah, I mean, look, the idea is that well, let's start with the idea or the premise that if you celebrate wins, um, maybe gratuitously, that it will somehow affect your push or your drive
Mhm.
to push for more, right? And so I would say that's something that, historically speaking, I'm not very good at. I think I did the
Yeah.
podcast with Matt. He's also not very good at it. Meaning, by the time you get to a win or a milestone or a benchmark, Jay, it's like the goalpost has already moved.
Yeah.
I always cite the tweet from Elon Musk, love him or not, when he became the wealthiest man in the world, and he posted a link to the article about him being the wealthiest man in the world, and he said, "Well, how about that? Dot dot dot. Now back to work." And I
Yeah.
appreciated that because it's like, well, it doesn't mean much. I mean, look, it means a lot, but you know what I mean. Like in his world, he's probably working really hard. Those aren't his objective is not to become wealthiest man in the world. And so sometimes when you have lofty goals, you set short-term goals that'll lead to long-term goal. But when you're not there yet, it's easy to just, yeah, the goalpost moves. And so a lot of the benchmarks that you set early on become anticlimactic. And this book was giving evidence essentially that you can do both. You can both look back at where you started and be proud of your accomplishments, and that it would not be a detriment to your ability to push forward and push for bigger and better things. And if anything, it would actually be a positive, lens to wear on what you've done and where you're headed. So for me, it was a real shift in paradigm to be like, wow, we've done this as a company, or I've done this personally, or personal professional development. Like, look how far I've come, and I still have a long way to go. And so I
Yeah.
think you can do both. And the idea is that if you do both, you're in a much more abundance mindset. You're happier in general, right? So there's a lot of positive things that come with looking back on the achievements that you've had, as long as that doesn't work against you in the sense that, like, oh, well, here I am, I've arrived. And I don't think
Right.
anyone, who's paranoid about reading the book and losing their edge would feel that way, right? I know I don't.
No.
And so, if anything, it's harder for me to remember the ideals and the principles of the book, which is like, don't forget to look back every now and then, take stock of what you've done,
Right.
and then immediately move forward. And what lessons did you learn, or what have you taught yourself? What kind of self-efficacy have you built that you can use as a tool to push you forward, because you're always pushing forward. So essentially that's the book. Is it's okay to look back and look at the gain. The gap is the gap between where you are now and where
Yeah.
you want to be. And that's the easiest thing to focus on. And I think that's okay, I mean, but it's not everything, right? There is a gain. So you have made some gains to get here. And yes, there's always going to be a gap between where you are and where you want to be. But hence the title, The Gap and the Gain. Can
Right.
you do both? Is it an and thing, not an or thing, right?
Right. So that was a great summation. Thank you very much. So tell
Sure.
me how, you've been franchising now for a little more than 5 years. You started right before the pandemic, and so not sure how we count those years, those lost months, but you're doing great. Obviously, Alloy is booming. I think you've sold more than 300 locations, got more than 100 open, and so applying the gap in the gain after 5.5 years now, look back and look forward. What do you see?
Yeah, I think, wow. I mean, to your point, when we started the franchise, and certainly COVID hit, we launched at the end of 2019. So we had a few months
Mhm.
under our belt, and then that's nothing, as you know. And then COVID hit, and it really derailed us until mid 21. So we considered, hey, we really started the process and got things rolling in mid 21. So mid 21 to mid 25. So really 4 solid years. To have now 360 licenses awarded or
Mm.
sold is another term for that. and to have 102 open with 17 in pre-sale, which means we'll have nearly 120 open here in the next few weeks. It's a big deal. And
Mm-hmm.
I can look back even 4 years ago at what I thought would happen at this stage and what I thought the sort of the mechanisms and the business systems and softwares and everything that we would need to get from here to there. Yes, some of those are true and some I've learned a ton. And what I thought was not true at all. And so,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I can look back and say, wow, I mean, look, there's stats, Jay, that we've talked about. Only 2% of, brick and mortar franchises ever get 100 locations open. So pretty good benchmark,
Yeah.
right? A pretty good milestone for us. And so I think what the gap in the game taught me and what I've learned is like, if there is something like that, it's really more important, maybe not even for me personally. It is obviously helpful, but I think more helpful that if I celebrate it, then I can celebrate it with my team.
Mm-hmm.
And so it also, because they're caught up in the same, hamster wheel that everyone is. They're just in
Right.
here working away, and it just seems like there's a never-ending, flurry of challenges and problems to be solved, and that's just business in general. But every
Yeah.
now and then, it's okay for the leader to be like, "Hey, we have a long way to go. We need to keep pushing, and look how well we've done. Look where we are." There's very
Absolutely.
few people who get where we are. And also, it kind of realigns the expectation. Like, why would you expect it to be anything but difficult if only 2% of franchises get here? Like, we're
Right.
in the 2%. There is a responsibility that comes with that. And so be proud of yourself that you're on the team. And it's going to be really hard. It's not going to get any easier at 300, 400, 500.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's been wildly beneficial for me to look back and see the things that we've accomplished that are not easy. More so, it's been great to then illuminate those things for the team so
Yeah.
that they can also feel good about where we are and know that like it's not going to get any easier. We got a big mountain to climb, right?
Yeah. You and I talk a lot about messaging and communications and what you're putting out to the world. Tell me something that you've learned in the last few years or that has evolved perhaps in your messaging that maybe you thought things were going to be one way when you started the franchising journey, and somewhere along the last few years something clicked or you saw it a little differently, and how has that informed what you're going to do next?
Yeah, I think it's easy early on to think. So there's a couple of ways to look at it. Like I really think that at times we're in two businesses, right? We're in the franchise business, which is a business in and of itself, regardless of what the end product or service is, and then we're in the fitness business. And so I would say maybe on two levels to answer that. In the fitness business, it's become apparent, which I knew already, but even more so when you start putting scale on something, 100 plus locations open, that the whys for our customer avatar have very little to do with six pack abs
Yeah.
and a lot more to do with quality of life. And
Right.
I think I knew that intuitively. Everyone will have a secondary goal of weight loss typically, right? Coming in. But
Sure.
really, if you read our success stories, it's almost an afterthought. And the weight loss was just a byproduct of getting to a healthier place. But getting to a healthier place allowed them to do what our brand promise says, which is live life to the fullest. So we have leaned heavily into that message. If you look at our success story videos that we shoot, it's like, we've got a great one out there from a guy who climbed Kilimanjaro.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he lost weight and got in really good shape aesthetically, but that wasn't what he was talking about at
Right.
all. It was all about this mountain climb, right? So we've leaned heavily into that message as opposed to the typical fitness message. Now, I knew it already, but boy, at scale, it really has driven that point home. So maybe a reinforcement, if anything. And then on the franchise side, developing that, it's really a lot about purpose. We get a lot of folks that have been working in corporate, for 25 years. They're burnout. They want to do something of meaning and put some good in the world. And so again, we've really leaned into purpose. I mean, you have to start with, can you get return on investment? Yes or no. If you can't do that, it doesn't matter how much purpose it has. But then beyond that, there's a lot of ways to make money. You could buy a franchise that does fencing or gutters or septic tank cleaning or whatever you want. But it's really nice to be able to get return on investment and put some good into the world. So we've really leaned heavily in our messaging for our franchise into purpose, right? Why we do what we do. And it's really important not only for our franchisees to continue to be reminded of that, but for people that are considering investing in Alloy, like, hey, you can do something that really puts some good into the world.
Yeah. Yeah. We were talking yesterday, and I think we were talking about how to decide who you're marketing to, or how to think about who your audience is. And, you know, we were talking about how saying you're over 50 is not enough to say that's your defining trait because there are so many different people in there. And when you started this, you told me once a few years ago that you discovered that a lot of the people that are in your audience are the movers and the shakers, the type A, the go-getters, right? I think you said yesterday something I wanted to ask you about, and that is that there's more than that. It's not just the type A super driven people who have succeeded and made a lot of their lives. Has was that something that you learned throughout this too, or um, how has that played into like who you're serving? Because the
I
reason I
think so.
ask is
Again,
because the reason I ask is because I get this a lot from young gym owners, not young in age, but who are newer in their business than you are, and they ask me, well, you know, who am I talking to? Am I talking to little old ladies? Am I talking to, you know, studly 55-year-old dudes? Who's my audience? And I always say that's up to you. Let's talk about it, but your messaging has to align. So I'm just curious how that evolved for you, if it did at all.
yeah, well, I think there's movers and shakers. If you look at the archetype wheel, you can name characters. One of
Yeah.
the characters is named movers, shakers. I mean, you can imagine smarter than the average bear, maybe entrepreneurial, again, financially well off. I mean, that is a good avatar for us to go after, right?
Right.
And if you think about the financial resources that are needed to purchase personal training, yeah, you're going to have somebody that they're at least well organized enough emotionally and financially to amass enough wealth or to have create enough income to be able to afford an expensive service, right? Discretionary income, if you will. So I think that mover shaker still stands, but I think when you look at this population, Jay, and I think when you just look at people in general, you can have someone that is a mover shaker financially who's in horrible physical shape, right? So
Hmm.
I don't think mover shaker always means that that person is also really fit. I think what it means typically as we're looking at it is how does this manifest itself financially? And we all know the folks that are financially very successful, but boy, they've done it at the expense of their health, right?
Sure.
And so I think we get a lot of those. So we get people that are smarter than the average bear. They do well financially, but they've done it at the expense of their physical health. So I think when you look at it that way, from an exercise standpoint, we're getting both people that are relatively fit that already exercise. Typically, if they have a few chinks in their armor or injuries that they
Yeah.
can't find a solution to work around, there's not a brand that can do that. We'll get those folks. And then we'll get people that are just fresh, either back to or first time ever to a structured exercise program. And they just didn't see anything in market that spoke to them
Hmm.
until we showed up and we have the right imaging and messaging, obviously that speaks to our avatar, which is important. So I
Right.
think we get both. Both could still be defined as movers and shakers, though, because that would be reflected in their financials, right?
Sure.
In that realm. So that's what we've noticed, if anything. I don't see it as much like a mover shaker's like a super go getter in every aspect of their life is hitting on all cylinders. I don't think it's that.
Hey, are you a fitness professional trying to grow your business with people over 50? If you are, then you need to know how to communicate with them, how to market to them, and how to get them to trust you with their fitness, well being, and money. We're talking about millions of people who are a little older than the typical market that the fitness industry usually pursues. They have more money, more time, and better motivation to make the best long term fitness consumers you'll find anywhere. If you're not focusing on them, you should be. Prime Fit Content is the only content marketing company designed specifically to help you engage people in this group and to help you distinguish yourself from competitors in your community. It's effective, affordable, and super easy to use. Check it out at primefitcontent.com. That's prime, like prime of your life, fitcontent.com. Back to the show. Okay. Yeah, I didn't. That's good to know. I guess I just want people out there who are looking at you and thinking, how can I emulate this guy's success a little bit? I want to help this market, but it's such a big, broad market. Well, you just have to think about it a little bit. You did a lot of research. You didn't just sit down one day and dream it up,
Right.
and you built your business around your research. So
What
that's a
affects
good.
everything? I mean, real
Yeah.
estate choices. Where are you going to put your location? Well, it needs to be a target rich environment for our customer avatar, right? And so obviously with data, that's more of an algorithm. You can find a good place to put it. We have final approval on that. So it wouldn't behoove any of us to put it in the wrong location.
Right.
But after, to your point, clearly define your customer avatar, and there's a cascading effect in almost every function of the business. From
Right.
to your point, like the messaging you're sending, like if you guys engage with Jay and he's sending out newsletters a couple times a week for your business, he's going to speak directly to this customer avatar, right? Because he knows them. So even that's affected. So every bit of communication, um, images, everything has to
Right.
speak to that customer and do it well. So
Yeah.
that's I think that's why it's so important, Jay, and what you're telling those folks that haven't started yet is have a clearly defined audience, and then that will affect almost every other decision in your business.
Exactly. So over these last few years, you have created a great many opportunities, and you have probably found a few distractions as well, right? And so I'm wondering, how do you decide what to ignore? What's noise, what's just squirrel, and how do you stay focused on the big picture of what's really important for you developing the brand?
Yeah, I think going into franchising, because I'm a consummate entrepreneur and I have lots of squirrels that run through the room and sometimes right through my brain, with all of these opportunities and extra things to do. But if you're going to do something big and massive, you need to just really stay focused. And it's different. It's very difficult. So I would say it's just a good discipline. And so the lens that, at least that I use, Jay, is like franchising is very complex at times. It's very litigious. There's lots of stages and steps and a million other companies that are supporting it, and it's a beast, right? But ultimately, if you can simplify it down to what is the real, you know, needle mover in a franchise business, and the answer is franchisee success. If your franchisees are getting return on investment, being able to serve that purpose that was the at least a secondary goal, right, of why they engaged
Right.
with Alloy, then everything's going to take care of itself. That'll fix sales. That'll fix, the financials of the franchise, because if the franchisees are doing better, we're sharing in their gross revenues by taking a royalty, which is a percentage of their top line revenue. So they do well, we do well. I love the alignment of that business. It's a fractionalized partner, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And so that then sets the perfect lens. Will this distraction, or opportunity would be a better word, will this opportunity lead to franchisee success, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you an example. So I used to speak a lot, as you know. I would speak maybe 20 times a year at different events. Sometimes it was friends that would ask me to come out and speak at events, and or just ones speaking circuits that I was on for 10 years plus. And when we had a licensing business, which means we were serving existing gym owners, that was a very good vehicle
Mm-hmm.
to get out and talk about things. And then people would want to hear more from you and engage with you. And then perhaps you could license them, right? And power them with a white labeled version of whatever they needed. Well, now that I'm into franchising, those same speaking opportunities aren't as effective or maybe relevant for my business. So I say no to
Mm-hmm.
99% of those. And it's weird, it's a bit of an identity crisis. It's like,
Yeah.
wow, I used to be the guy that was up on the stage and everybody loved what you had to say. But like my main goal is to grow the franchise. So I'll take a speaking engagement if it moves the needle on the franchise. Otherwise, I'm not doing it. Right. And so that's just one example of out of hundreds where I just don't do things anymore. I get a lot of folks that reach out and say, hey, do you still do consulting? No. And it's like, could I take a 1 hour phone call and charge somebody $500 or whatever I used to charge? Sure, but I don't do it because it's a slippery slope. And it's
Mm-hmm.
like, again, it's like a discipline, right? It's like, okay, if you're trying to lose weight, you could eat an apple pie and maybe still lose weight, but you just don't, because it just, it's just not the right thing to do. And
Right.
so same here. So I can think of a million examples, but basically that's the ultimate lens. Does it help franchisees help more people and by default make more money? And then by default, it helps us make more money. If it doesn't do that, I'm not going to do it, period.
So I think the lesson maybe for other entrepreneurs who are not franchising, um, might be to have some lens. Maybe it's going to be a different lens than the one that you adopted and reference throughout your experiences. I do that myself. I'm always there's always a new social media channel. There's always a new app. There's always a new doodad to help me do my communications jobs better, or to market my business better, or to do something better and faster, and some of it's pretty sexy, you know, and it catches my eye, and I'm like, yeah, I want that. Let's do that. And I have to think about, well, what's my thing is I want to grow the business. I want to get my business to a certain number of gyms where I have a certain ceiling, you know, a certain minimum of clients. That's what I think about. It's like, yeah, it would be fun to do all those things. It would be cool to go and do these, learn how to do all these new new tools. But am I learning anything? Am I helping anybody grow their business? Am I growing my business? That has to be it, because there's just only so many hours in the day, right? That we
Right.
all have. That
And I
kind of
think
goes,
really for entrepreneurs, this is the thing I see that may be the number one mistake that holds them back
okay.
from scaling a large business. Sometimes you're in the wrong vehicle. I get it. And you're looking for opportunities. Nothing wrong with that. But once you land on something that has legs and there's a runway there, your ability to wake up every day and just incrementally improve
Yep.
on that journey, whether it's product or service or message or marketing, all the things, right, that come along with building a business, it takes a lot of discipline to do so. So it may take you a minute to find your heat signature. You know, we
Mm-hmm.
often use the term bullets before cannonballs, which is from a Jim Collins book where you have a finite amount of gunpowder and you're an enemy ship sailing, you're sailing towards an enemy ship in the old days where you had cannons. And it's like, well, do you pour all your gunpowder and you only have enough for one big cannon shot? Do you pour it in there and hope you get it right? Or would it be
Right.
more pertinent to put a little bit of gunpowder in a few rifles until you ping a few off the hull and get your range, then load up your cannon? So I think if you use that principle, we often say that in our business, hey man, bullets before cannonballs. It's like you can have some feelers out there. You can give a little bit of attention here and there,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because you don't want to have blinders on so focused on the one goal that you don't have anything in your peripheral that you may miss. But it's a fine line, right? It's a dance. It's a skill that you can learn over time where there will be things that pop up that are adjacent but do help you towards that goal.
Yeah.
But if they're wildly different, and that's what we typically see. And here's what we see. If you can't focus, what I'll see is a franchisee will start an endeavor. It might be mildly successful, but boy, that push to get through that ceiling that maybe every business in that category runs into is really just discipline. And it's about, again, people say it, do the boring work,
Mm-hmm.
do the things and repetitively until you get so good at them that you can't be denied. That's how you do it, right? It's not sexy. It's not fun. But what we'll see is entrepreneurs will run into that headwind, and instead of just buckling down and continuing to do the thing until they get better at it and figuring it out, they will shift gears and start something else.
Yeah.
And so, like, oh, well, that's not where it's at. I'm going to go here and do this. And
Yeah.
maybe it's like, oh, I'm going to go from like if I'm running a fitness franchise, I'm going to start a coaching business now
Yeah.
where I coach other entrepreneurs on how to do stuff. It's like, that's not the same business at all. And
Yeah.
then guess what? That thing might scale a little bit. And you know what you're going to do? You're going to run into the same headwinds that you did in your first project. And you're going to find out that you are the roadblock. You're the one holding it back because as soon as you run into those headwinds, you're going to tell yourself it's not the right vehicle. And maybe I'll do this and maybe I'll do that. And then you're going to end up with 4 or 5 half-baked businesses that never really break through and do anything significant. You might cobble a living together. There's nothing wrong with that, but you're never going to do anything big because you couldn't stay focused long enough, right? And you thought it was the business model, or the opportunity, and it was really just you as an individual. So I
Right.
see that a lot.
Yeah. I see it a lot with gym owners trying to get their communications or their marketing messaging out. You know, they'll hire me to do their content, and 3 weeks go by and they don't have 25 new members, and they're like, this isn't working. Like,
Yeah, it's a
you don't
trust
know
the
if it, yeah,
process for sure.
it's the process, man. You got to give everything some time. Okay, so I promised you 5 questions, and we've made it through three. So I want to keep this bus
All right,
moving
look, I'll keep
forward.
it succinct. Let's go.
No,
Difficult to
I'm
do,
not.
but
I'm just saying I'm trying to honor your time here and stay to the
that's
premise
okay.
of
I'm
five
here.
questions. Okay. Question number four is has to do with marketing messages and breaking through the new noise, because we're all slammed with so many messages constantly, right? Um, and so I want to ask you just personally to think of something that has stopped you and got your attention naturally when you weren't even thinking about it. Maybe you're just scrolling through your social media, you're flipping dials on TV or flip through a magazine, anything, I don't care. What was a message or an image or something that made you stop and laugh or think or get a tear in your eye, anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's a bunch of those out there. As you were talking, I was thinking about an initiative that Domino's Pizza did one time that was super clever. One of the biggest complaints is like the pizza may show up to someone's house and, if you've driven over a real bumpy, lumpy road, maybe you shook the pizza up and there's some cheese stuck to the top of the box or, whatever. It would be disruptive to the structure of the pizza to bounce over a pothole
Sure.
filled road, right? And so what they did is instead of, you know, complaining to the city, they just started fixing potholes. And they would put like a little Domino's logo, kind of transparent, but you could still see it like on top of the tar. And they just started fixing potholes all over these little towns, right, that were causing this disruption in the way the pizza was delivered. They got tons of press from that, tons. I mean, they got all kinds of national press and press releases and stories written. And like, it's just a really creative way to look at marketing. It's like, well, here's a problem bouncing down these horrible streets trying to deliver these pizzas. Not good for the pizza. People don't like it. So we could complain about it and try to get the city to do something, or it's not that expensive. We can just go out and patch some potholes, right? And
Yeah.
they did. And so they got whatever permitted they need. They started patching potholes, and lo and behold, it turned into this massive national marketing campaign. So that's one like gaudy example that I thought was just really thinking out of the box. But I saw one today. It's funny that you mentioned that I thought was right on the nose. It was for Amazon's new like remote virtual physicians and pharmacy service. And
Mm-hmm.
it was a family on vacation. And the guy's in the bed with his like man cold, we're laughing because it's probably not as bad as he's making it
Right.
out to be. And there's a woman there and she's in a bathing suit, and she's got these two kids with floaties and, you know, uh, pool toys. And she looks out the window and there's like a wild water park down below the window. And it's just all kids running around. And the dad's, of course, in bed sick. And she just basically gets on Amazon, dials up the doctor's on the screen, and she just reaches behind her and just hands it to him like, here, like, we're not doing this, right? You're not laying in this bed all day while I go hauling these kids all over the water park. She doesn't even have to say it. You just get it right away, because so many people have been in that situation where it's like, you go on vacation with two little kids. It's really
Yeah.
like, it's kind of a vacation, also kind of not.
Right.
And so this mom is just like, like, I'll get you a doctor. We'll get you some meds and they'll deliver right here to this hotel room. So it's a way to advertise in a very real world example that a lot of us, if you've had kids, have been in that situation. So I just laughed. I'm like, so clever. The guy's dying because he has his man cold. She's like, we're not having this. And she dials up a doctor on the phone, taps him on the shoulder, hands him the phone, and boy, right there on the screen is the physician. He's gonna have to tell him the symptoms, and then a couple minutes later, he's gonna get some pharmaceuticals delivered to his room so that he can take the kids out to that very fun wave pool and splash
Yeah.
around with 1,000 other kids, right? But no, it's just a clever commercial. It speaks to
Sure.
something that a lot of people have been through, and also speaks to the convenience of like, hey, you can be laid up on vacation, get a doctor on the phone quickly, and have the meds delivered right to your hotel room. So
Right.
really cool,
Right. That's a good one. I
clever.
like that. You've made me want to call Domino's Pizza for the first time in about what,
Yeah,
since the
pizza
dorm
still
room,
sucks, but at
probably.
least at least they're patching potholes.
At least they're patching potholes. That's right. Let's talk about small group personal training.
I know something about that.
I know you, I've heard that you do. So, um, I want to say before the pandemic, maybe I'm wrong about this, you can correct me, but it was less widely in use. Is that fair to say?
It's hard to say. We started it in year 2000, so I
Okay.
knew a lot of private gyms that we had worked with as a license that were doing it. It's typically just one location, owner operated, so there were people out there doing it. Nobody at scale, though. But
That
yeah, there were people doing it, but nobody really, like I said, at scale. And sometimes the word small group training would be used for what you and I would call a class, because it was really a small group of 25 people.
right.
So, then we switched to like, okay, personal training in a small group. And I know that sounds nuanced, and it is, but it's important, right? Small group training is just a bastardized term that can be used for any kind of a class-based concept, which we are not.
Right. So what I'm getting at is that that has crystallized, I think, and that has taken firmer shape. At least it has in my mind. It seems like 5 or 6 years ago, people were weren't quite sure what that meant. Does that mean spin class with 40 people in the room? No. And then COVID happened and we weren't doing that anymore. And we had to sort of refocus on what we were talking about, kind of like with online training or video training. Um, so what I'm getting at is there's often an evolution of things. Initially, we might poo-poo them, or we might not understand them, or we might think, oh, that's a ridiculous trend. That's never going to last. So given all of that, what's something going on now that some people aren't seeing or getting or dismissing as a trend that if I'm a gym owner, I need to be paying attention to?
Well, I think it depends on the model, really. I mean, there's other models that are doing well that aren't in our sector, like the high value, low price. So they're often, HVLP models, which would be like a Planet and a Crunch, or certainly those kind of guys. They're doing really well right now. They're way up. So if you look
Mm-hmm.
at a lot of these displaced folks, they end up joining a regular old gym. And for
Mm-hmm.
$9, not a bad deal, right? Some of these gyms
Right.
offer a lot for that. So that's growing pretty well. And then in the boutique sector, which we're in, people have moved away from maybe cardio based
Mm-hmm.
choices, which, as we know, this day and age, certainly in our avatar, our target age group, it's like strength is really where it's at, right? And
Yeah.
that's a very widespread message right now. So I would say, at least for the next 5 years, you're looking at a couple of things, probably more science and strength based focus, right?
Mm-hmm.
And also, it's very experiential. If you look at companies like Airbnb, one of their main revenue earners is, selling additional like food tours and bicycle tours and whatever that may be, just, tacking on things like that, experiences based on the location. Right? So if I rent the house, it's like, hey, would you like to do this? How about a food tour? How about a bike tour? How about a guided hike? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
somebody can come to your house and do yoga, have a chef come over and make you dinner. All these little services that have popped up that are very popular right now. So I think if you're looking at our industry, think more experiential,
Mm-hmm.
which at times can involve AI and at times it can be at the expense of experiential, meaning there's normally a people to people connection there, and so some automation is good, but as we all push for fully AI driven full automation, at least our lens is that needs to be just to bring down friction to get humans together, right? Because we still haven't evolved to the point where we don't need other humans in our circle, right?
Mm-hmm.
And to be with people. AI is not quite there yet. Now, who knows? It moves so fast. I mean, you hear all the reports. It's 500 times faster than we are, and who knows what's happening, right?
Right.
But right now, that's at least what I see. What people might be missing on is like you fall in love with the tools and the
Yes.
stuff, but not necessarily what the stuff does, right? And so
Right.
for us, it's about making human to human connections and just making people again live life to the fullest. I don't think AI is going to do that now, but there are parts of the business where it will bring down friction to make
Mm-hmm.
those things easier to get to. It might bring down friction for our franchisees. I mean, there are efficiency tools, yes, all of that. But as far as the customer experience, um, not so much once you get together. So anyway, that's where we see it. And
Yeah.
it's really hard to say beyond a few years out, Jay, just because tech is moving so fast. I don't even, who
Yeah.
knows really?
I know it's fascinating, and I'm glad to hear you talk about it without any fear. And I'm not afraid of this either. There's so many people afraid that AI is going to ruin everything. It's like, I don't know, maybe it will. What do I know? But
Maybe.
I'm not
Well,
worried
you know
about
what?
it
It's
right
like
now.
it's always an and, right? Like there'll be just like any tool that ever comes out, there'll be a ton of super positive things, and there'll be governments that are trying to weaponize it, right? And do terrible things
Yeah.
with it. But that's just humans. Anytime you give a tool like
Yeah.
that to humans, that's going to happen. There's good players and bad players, and that's always going to be the case. So I tend to be glass half full like yourself. So I
Hmm.
look at all the positive things that AI is going to bring. I
Right.
can't do anything about the negative things anyway. I'm not running any large governments this last time I checked. So
No, no, no one's asked me to
I
do
have
that
no
today.
effect over whether
No,
we're going to build bots that murder people and do horrible things. I don't know. If it
I
becomes
don't.
sentient like the Terminator and kills us all, also can't control that. So I choose to look at all the amazing positive things that it's going to bring to our business to get people together.
I like that. And that concludes our 5 questions, but I'm not going to let you go just yet because you hit on something, this idea of broader experiences and bringing people together and the role that fitness plays in that. It goes into a main theme of what I write about, and I know a main theme of what Alloy believes in, and that is that this being fit, later in life, gives you, when you have the strength and endurance and agility to do the things that you want to do, you have a better life and a better, longer health span, play span, whatever you want to call it.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder if there are some opportunities coming up, or maybe they're already here, where gyms and fitness businesses can coordinate or market together with other, I don't know, travel organizations or biking organizations or hiking groups or what have you, to get to sort of bring down the walls between going to the gym and having a fit lifestyle,
Right.
because we really want people to be healthy and fit, which maybe that's going to the gym and lifting weights, and maybe it's doing something else. So if you can incorporate that, if we can incorporate that in people's minds, that it's your life, it's not just a place you go to 3 days a week for an hour and complain about how much you hate it and how come I'm not losing any weight and this sucks. No, it's your life, whatever that might be. um, I think that's the possibility that I think is going to appeal to a lot of people who just still don't get it about strength training and going to the gym. And we can keep bringing those messages and making inroads, but when we connect the different parts of their life, man, that's where it happens, I think.
Yeah, totally agree. Totally agree. I look forward to where we end up with those things. But yeah, obviously we're on the same path. So I get it 100%.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Rick, promised you 5 questions. You gave me 5.5. So I appreciate that. And
Yeah, man. Look, they were great questions. It's an honor to be on once again. I think we're multi guests on each other's podcasts.
yes,
So nothing wrong with that. But yeah, man, thanks for giving me a chance to express some ideas. And the questions were different than the normal questions. So I appreciate that.
well, good. That was what I was hoping for, because yeah, got to do something different. Got to keep it fresh.
All right,
Okay.
my friend. Good to see you.
Good to see you, Rick. Thanks.
All right.
Bye.
Cheers.